BBC Bristol.
Thank you very much, Steve, for inviting me to your radio show. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. They had lots of kilns, materials, equipment, and it got me thinking a lot, yeah, because it really got me thinking about like new ideas and different processes. So yeah, it was interesting. So I did an MA there for 2 years, and yeah, I was just really honing in on my kind of my passion for ceramics, really, because I wanted to continue expanding my ideas.
When did your interest in ceramics originally begin? Because it's not generally something that gets young people fascinated. You tend to get in later life, but you were young when you got interested in ceramics. Do you know what sparked it originally?
School. It was back at school. They also had a ceramics department.
Did you have a good teacher then that inspired you, or was it just the facilities and you saw the potential?
Yeah, the teachers and the facilities. Yeah, and that's what really fascinated me, because I mean, I think when I was at school, I just really gravitated to creating stuff with my hands. And I think that's always followed through. I've always just enjoyed using my hands to create things. And so back at school, we were introduced, we had the option to look into ceramics, because they also had kilns there, pottery wheels, clay, everything. And I think I just naturally got drawn to it.
Yeah, well, you've been making ceramic sculptures and paintings professionally for the last 7 years or so. It's a precarious career, though, isn't it? I mean, you don't get many people who make a fortune out of ceramics. Of course, in recent years, you've had Grayson Perry, who's a real outlier and a great personality and very talented. He doesn't just make ceramics, but just embroidery and lots of other stuff. He's given it a real boost, hasn't he? And the interest in ceramics through him alone has grown, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's helped put ceramic as an art form in the contemporary art world arena. Yes. Because I think with Grayson Perry, he's like an artist. Like I see him as like an artist, but he's using clay to express his artistic visions, his ideas. And so yeah, I think because for that reason, that has given ceramics this kind of platform that. Whereas traditionally ceramics was just used for pottery.
Exactly. I mean, some artists have dabbled. I mean, Picasso famously dabbled in ceramics. But even so, his ceramic works, he did a lot of painted plates. Don't sell for the sort of prices that his painted works do. Ceramic work always seems to sell for less money. Yeah,
it has had that kind of. I guess that kind of reputation in the policy as the value being seen lower than.
I don't understand why, actually. It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think it's because of that tradition, I guess, because it's always had that tradition associated with it, like paintings being like valued, like having that perceived like a more of a perceived value than ceramics. But having said that, I mean, ceramics is a very complicated material to learn. I mean, I've spent like years like learning the processes, like how to throw pottery on the potter's wheel and how to make sculpture from it. Because there's so many kind of processes involved. You got generally with ceramics, you got to fire it twice in a kiln. Once to 1,000 to get rid of the water, and the second time to another temperature to put the glaze on. And of course, you got to shape the thing and think about the drying stages as well, and how you glaze the work, or if you decide not to glaze the work. So
evolved over the years. What was it like when you began? When you first started, what sort of work were you creating initially?
When I was, I think functional. Yeah. So when I was at school, when I was like bridging. I was thinking about like functional objects, and then bridging that gap between like sculptural objects. So like I remember. Like back in the day, I created like some kind of like teapot that had like this gecko for the handle or something, and it was like crossing in between the two, and but then afterwards, after school and like going through college and uni, I realised I wanted to approach ceramics as more of like a sculptural medium. So I wanted to create like sculpture, like abstract sculpture, to evoke curiosity, because. I think I realised, like ceramics with clay, you can do so many things. You can shape it into anything. It doesn't have to be pottery. You can shape it into sculpture, whether that's figurative sculpture or abstract sculpture.
So you're making completely. Everyone is different. It has its own nuances, and even though the two might be a similar design, they're never the same, are they?
No, exactly. Yeah. So like these are some examples that I brought in. I guess obviously you can't see it on the radio, but I guess I can try and do my best to describe it. So this is an example of a wall sculpture that I created. And what I've done is I've used spheres thrown on the potter's wheel, which I then cut up and joined together to create these geometric kind of formations, which I then apply colour, patterns, so you have lots of like dots on the surface. And then it's also set inside a frame. So this is really interesting because generally sculpture is seen as being like standalone. Like you have a three-dimensional sculpture like this piece, and then you place it down on the table and it becomes a three-dimensional standalone sculpture. But then I'm thinking, well, what happens when you take a sculpture and you place it in a frame? Then it becomes something else because you're kind of bridging the gap between like something that's 2D and something that's sculptural. So that's for me is the possibility of ceramics, because I realised there's so many different ways. There's so many ways you can transform clay into an artistic form of expression. You know, it can be a wall piece, it can be a standalone sculpture. So, and that's what fascinates me, because clay is a really malleable material. You can shape it into anything, and you can also treat the surface like a painting.
Yeah, I must say your pieces are a delight to the eye. I mean, that one you started with, it has it's a circular object, has a gold rim, and there are 6 or 7 sort of semicircles of clay which are coloured blue and white, and it's a delight. It's a really nice thing to look at. Whereas this other one is about 6 or 7 spheres, about the size of a cricket ball, all joined together.
Yeah.
A lot of your work actually starts on the potter's wheel, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So when I finished my MA, or during the process, I was like investigating using the potter's wheel to create things like spheres and cones, and I was like cutting them up and then joining them together, because I realised that was a fascinating process, because you could shape and you're taking that tradition but you're shifting it into sculpture. And that's what really fascinated me, because like traditionally the potter's wheel was seen as like a tool to create things like pottery, like this mug. But by shifting it into sculpture, you can create something else.
What sort of clay do you use? I presume there are many different types of clay that you could use. What do you go for?
Generally stoneware. Yeah, I mostly go for stoneware because I like high firing my pieces, because I can get lots of textures, depth of colour. It also becomes really durable at that stage. So meaning because you're heating up the clay to a higher temperature, it makes the clay more dense, more strong, and so that's also really, for me, is like really suitable for sculpture. And yeah, so that's a clay that I mostly always use. I've done it a couple of times, but porcelain is another clay in itself, because that's quite difficult to work with. It's porcelain is there's a type of porcelain which you get called royal porcelain, and it's produced up in Stoke-on-Trent, I think it could be. Don't quote me on that, but it's but that's the interesting thing as well. There's a lot of the clays and ceramic materials are produced in the UK, and that's what I love about the UK is that we do produce a lot of ceramic materials. We do have a lot of resources, but that's another clay that I've used.
I assume you've got your own kiln these days, have you? Which is at your wherever you live, and you use it. How often would a piece crack during the firing process? Does that happen often, or is it just an occasional thing?
Yeah, not very often. Yeah,
how do you feel when that happens? Is it kicking the guts for you, is it?
It is, I'd rather not go there. Yeah, it's like, I used to have it. When I was starting out, I used to get like things like cracks, and you spend all this time making something, and then the piece was.
You change your technique to compensate them. What do you do different?
Practice. Yeah, so practice, I have to think about how I join the pieces. So if I haven't joined them correctly, then that'd be more prone to cracking. So when you join the pieces, you have to, what you call it scoring the surface. So you get like a sharp needle. You can scratch the surface and apply liquid clay to that surface, then join another item to it. And so by doing that and making sure the clay's at the right consistency, because it doesn't want to, for this kind of work, it doesn't want to be too soft, but it doesn't want to be too hard. So you've got to get that right.
That comes with experience, as you said. What about breaking a piece after you've finished it? Have you ever accidentally dropped one?
I don't think. No, I think the worst situation I had was the glaze completely ran off the shelf onto the shelf, and the piece got stuck. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah, did you have to just jettison it then, did you?
Well, I think I managed to save one. Yeah, so I managed to kind of chisel it off and just like sand down the base and save it. Yeah, and I think it did have a crack on the surface, but then I got some, I think some kind of like putty that you can fill into the surface, and that was quite interesting because I was then like highlighting that kind of crack as well. So which is interesting because like traditionally in ceramics, cracks are seen as like kind of like a fault, like something that, you know, people try and avoid. But then I was kind of thinking, well, what happens if you can like highlight the crack and make it like a new aesthetic feature in itself?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I did that with that piece, which is quite interesting. But yeah, cracks, I try and avoid them mostly. Yeah.
Not only do you produce these wonderful sort of sculptural pieces, you also have a range of tableware, cups and jugs, spoon rests and soap dishes.
Yeah.
But every one, as I've already mentioned, is completely individual because the way that you apply the glaze or whatever, the way they turn out, the way you've manipulated them with your hand. So they are very precious individual objects, aren't they? But that makes them more expensive to produce as well, though, doesn't it? 'Cause it's time consuming, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's the time that goes into it. I mean, often I spend up to a month to make something like 2 or 3 pieces of these. Because these go through multiple, like this one, this goes through multiple stages. So I have to throw the spheres first individually, cut them up and join them together. And then I got to then refine it, and then I'm going to put it in a kiln and fire it to 1000 degrees to get rid of any water. And then I've got to take it out and I've got to apply the colour, which is like a spray paint that you spray onto the surface. And then use masking tape to create all these kind of like patterns. Yeah, the colour stage will often go through around about 1 to 2 firings, and then after that I've got to then spray on a glaze, and that's another firing. So that's probably 3 or 4 firings on average.
And it's not just the sculptures that you produce, you also paint both abstract and figurative. I think you use acrylic and sometimes household paint. I was looking at your website, you've got a lovely website, I'll give the details later on. Some of the paints are inspired by, I presume, your travels, because there's Iceland, Turkey and Egypt. They're places you've been to, presumably, aren't they?
Not Egypt, no. I'd love to go to Egypt, I'd like to see the pyramids there, but unfortunately I haven't been to Egypt yet. But the most recent one I went to was, because I often apply for these things like residencies, which is like dedicated time that you can go away and you can work on creating a new body.
You've had a residency in Latvia and Lithuania.
The recent one I did was in Latvia, in Azabut, I think that's how you pronounce it.
How long were you there for then?
That was just under 2 weeks. So I was there with my wife, and we were doing a workshop of calligraphy. My wife, she focuses on calligraphy, that's her thing.
Yes.
And so we were there for that. And also we had a little bit of time just to do some making. So in less than 5 days, I constructed a piece like this. I made 2 pieces like this. So this is the first piece in the series, and the second one is back in the studio. And that was, constructed throwing spheres on the potter's wheel and then cutting them up and joining them together. Because I'm often interested in geometrics and then using colour to highlight contrasting colours and patterns, and then using glaze. So, and this one also doubles up as a vase as well. Because that's another thing, I was thinking, what happens if you bridge the gap between that sculpture and a vase? So I put a little hole in the top there so you can put flowers. And that's what's interesting as well, because when we were there, it was kind of like a cultural kind of visit, because we were there to kind of summer solstice there, because in Latvia they really focus on that tradition, because I think because of all their kind of like pagan past, and also they have so much like nature there. It was amazing because they got so many trees. There's only less than 2 million people living there, and the country is pretty big. But and when we travelled from Riga to Azabut, a small village, a rural village, all like on our travels, all we could see was like trees, like forests and farms. It was just, and you could hardly see anyone there.
It sounds very appealing. Now, your work has been featured in group exhibitions around the world: Italy, France, Germany, South Korea, Australia, Kenya, and closer to home, You've been at the Royal West England Academy as well.
Yeah.
And you've had a solo exhibition in Taiwan. I think you have, haven't you? Did you go to the opening of that? Or
I did, yeah.
What was that like as an experience?
That's different, yeah. That's really exciting because it got me to see a new perspective of like different art forms and like other ceramic artists there.
Yes.
And that's what I realised. That's why I really like travelling and doing things like residencies and these kind of things, because you get a different perspective of different arts. Because the UK has its own kind of like way of creating art, but so do like other countries, which is very different from the art that like we create here. So that really opens up my mind.
Are you sometimes reluctant to let a piece go if you're particularly fond of it?
Yeah, that sometimes happens. Yeah, like if I'm really fond of the piece, I'll often want to keep hold of it. But I like to see my pieces get out there, you know, into people's homes or into new spaces, because I know that people will appreciate it. And if it stays in my studio, then it will kind of like mouse up. So
Yeah, well, I know you've got some pieces in public collections, haven't you? One final thing I wanted to mention is Stonehenge, which I know you've said in the past you find inspirational. Of course, many people are familiar with Neolithic sculpture in Wiltshire.
Yeah.
It really is amazing, even though it's in ruins these days. It's something about it's very powerful, isn't it?
It is mystical about that place. That's been an inspiration for me, because what I found interesting about that place is that people bring their own thoughts and ideas to that monument, because there's no sign that tells you exactly like what it is. I mean, sure, there's researchers that have gone out there and they've suggested it might be used for like burials and ceremonies, and again relating to the solstice, like the winter solstice, summer solstice. I mean, people still have traditions there where they go out and celebrate those occasions, and then being in alignment with the sun and, you know, astrology. But there's no like concrete evidence as to specifically, like no one has the definitive a definitive answer as to the reason why it was built. And so that really fascinates me, that mystery. I think in today's world there's not many places like that really kind of like captures your imagination. You know, when you walk around the city of Bristol, for example, you see a building and you kind of know instantly what that building is, whether that's a house or an office. But with Stonehenge, you're having to bring your own like interpretation.
I wonder if someone in the future would uncover some of your work and wonder what the hell the artist was thinking. Well, what a pleasure, Martin. I think your work is lovely, and I recommend people look at your website, which is martinharmanart.com, where you'll see many pictures of Martin's work, both his sculptural work and his paintings. Thank you very much for coming today. What's your wife's name?
And my wife's name is WEN-HSI.
Is that her outside?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
Say hello to her. Martin, what a pleasure. Every success in the future. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
There you go. That is Martin Harman, who's a talented multimedia artist from our area. If you want more details, simply look at his website. It's www.martinharmanart.com.